Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So a couple weeks ago I was at my local doll show and I found this little kit there and I decided to share it with everyone today. This video isn't really going to be like a formal DIY. I mean, you can watch the time lapse of it and completely mute the audio if you don't want to hear me talk, but I'm probably just going to talk about whatever I want while the time lapse is going on in the background. If you are interested in the kit, I can try to find it and link it in the description. However, the entire kit is in Chinese. There's like no English instruction whatsoever. But if you're ever interested in purchasing any kits like these, you can just find them on Amazon. And hopefully they have instructions in whichever language you're most comfortable in. The kit that I'm doing here today is kind of like an art shop, an art gallery kind of room, and I added a whole bunch of other stuff to it to make it my own. I think it's more fun if you take the time to personalize it as opposed to just following the kit exactly. You could totally do that, but it just doesn't make me feel like I'm using any creativity whatsoever. So I did add a whole bunch to this. I will mention whenever I add something that is not provided in the kit. So right off the bat, actually, you might have noticed I switched the plastic that they used for the windows. They provided like this really flimsy plastic, and if you ever need plastic, like the hard kind of plastic, I would just use it from various packaging that you find. I always try to save packaging, and if I can't use it, then obviously I just recycle it. Question: do you prefer time lapses with commentary or not? Personally, I could go either or. The only thing is that if I see a whole bunch of time lapses with no commentary, I find that it really disassociates the artist for me. It just seems like there's a person and I don't get to know the artist as a person, and it makes it seem as though I can't really relate to the person as much, whereas if I do hear a commentary, then I can kind of get to know the person, I guess. But at the same time, I'm very picky about voices, so there's a lot of artists where I tend to not really watch their videos because I don't like the sound of their voice or find their voice really jarring. I'm sorry if that sounds really mean, but anyways, I usually would try to just watch the video anyways, but I'll just like mute the audio, which sounds really mean, and I won't be offended if you mute my audio. So a lot of these kits actually do provide like a piece of paper with a whole bunch of the artwork. I usually use a fair amount of it, but I do notice that the papers that I don't use are usually just like the flooring or the wallpaper of the room. I find them to be kind of ugly or really dated, so you can see that I think the flooring was supposed to be that like pebbled look. I ended up just using my own scrapbooking paper, and that's something that is pretty easy to switch out. You just have to copy the pattern onto your own paper. One thing that I did notice about this kit, and a couple kits usually, is that the pieces don't fit 100%, which is kind of really annoying because you're gonna have to go in with like sandpaper. I do have a mini Dremel which I use, which I can link in the description, that I use to sand all of my wood pieces, and it definitely makes it a lot easier and just to make it so all the pieces actually fit properly. I also had a lot of trouble with that sign, like the large sign. I had to make extra pieces to go around it just to make it look a little bit cleaner. I decided to add these tiny little tan pebbles onto the exterior of the building just because I think it brings a little bit more like structural interest. It just looks a little bit better. I won't be keeping it this color. I will be color matching it and painting it that kind of Payne's gray light blue color afterwards. So like I said earlier, I did change literally all of the walls and the floors of this kit. I just wanted to deal with it. So one of the ideas that I was thinking of doing for a video idea in the near future is kind of like my own, I guess, ideas on DIYs that I think the general public should not do. as some of you may know, I used to work at a craft store, and I have accumulated a lot of really bad Pinterest ideas that people are into. It's just, I have like this plethora of just DIYs that are horrible to do, and I'm kind of interested in maybe talking about that and the reason why you shouldn't do certain DIYs. Let me know if you're interested in that. Here I am just trying to color match the paint that's already on the exterior. It's kind of like a really light gray, light blue color, so I mostly just use, I think, Payne's gray, like a very, very light blue and white, and I think like a little bit of a regular brown color. I decided to paint the underside of this too. I don't really know why, because you're never really gonna see it, but I did it anyways. So before I was about to attach the sidewalk portion to the exterior wall, I realized that there was actually a tiny gap near the door, so I just used a skinny stick and I just kind of shoved it in there to make, I guess, like a door thing at the bottom, just so that it was flushed. Now that the sidewalk was attached to the exterior wall, I did take some time to kind of distress the walls, give a little bit more detail, a little bit more of a grungy look to the paint. Maybe this is a really old building, I just wanted it to look a little bit more rustic. And whenever I'm using that brown color, I usually use like a burnt sienna color. Taking the time to add a little bit more color to the wood paneling or the flooring or whatever you have will definitely make it a little bit more realistic. Things in real life are not just one flat color, so I find that any miniatures that have a little bit extra color just look a little bit better. Now for this building, I decided to make it look like moss was kind of growing over it, like there was greenery or vines. So I used a combination of moss that I had and also this like green foamy stuff that I got from my local craft store. And then I also used some dried flowers and I just glued it all on with, I believe I just used Mod Podge. You might have noticed that there was also kind of like a weird gap at the bottom between the sidewalk and the building, so I just decided to throw in more of those little pebbles. I just kept it the regular color though, so it kind of looked like they were supposed to be there. And here I am going in with the moss now, and this I'm actually just using with some hot glue and burning my fingers a lot. Don't do this. Don't do it. I don't know why I always do this. Don't burn your fingers. I am not responsible if you burn your fingers, okay? Which just don't burn your fingers. Not gonna burn your fingers. Don't burn your fingers. I never drink Coke anymore, and I just had a Coke, and now I'm just gonna be shaking the entire time I'm voicing over this voice. Okay, I finished up with most of the moss and the greenery. We're gonna move on to the door handle. The door handle that was provided in the kit was literally only the little black stick and the two silver balls. Anyways, I decided to add these two little black, I don't know what to call them. I ripped them apart from something else. They look like little eyelets. And I'm gonna use that to attach with the handle. You'll be able to see it, and it just looks way more realistic this way. Suddenly it's spring and all my neighbors are being assholes. Sorry, anyways, I'm going to be distressing the exterior of the building a little bit more. Also, a fun thing with the moss, if there's any imperfections that you really don't like and you want to cover it up, you can use the moss and nobody will know, except now everybody knows because I publicized it. Oh well! Okay, so moving on to the furniture. This is the bookshelf that I'm putting together. I'm also taking the time to actually measure where the shelves are supposed to be and make a little mark with a pencil so when I glue it together I can know for sure that it is exactly where it's supposed to be. When I was in art school, I had a professor that was like, don't ever use yellow. Yellow is the most obnoxious color. And I kind of agree. Yellow is kind of obnoxious. This is a little bit too bright to my liking. I'm going to tone it down with a very light cream color. Next, I'm moving on to making this little column thingy. It is supposed to be 2 pieces of wood and this corrugated cardboard that they give. And they give you measurements. I didn't follow it because it didn't really match for some reason. The measurements were way too tall, so I just did my own thing. This might not show up on camera, but the white on the squares and the white in the paper are 2 different shades of white, so I'm going to be repainting the whole thing in another shade of white. So moving on to the lights, in the kit it actually only tells you to use one of the lights. For some reason, I opted to use both, and you'll see later that I actually used the other one to make it kind of look like an outdoor light. The light is actually a little bit brighter than this. I was using old batteries just to test if it was working or not. Okay, and this is the part where you can take your own judgment and, do whatever you want. I hated the wire and the paper that they provided, and they wanted you to make like this hanging plant thingy, like this winding ivy, and I didn't like it, so I did my own thing. So basically, I just got a piece of paper. It is very thin paper. I want to say it's closer to like a rice paper, so I don't know, maybe like a 50-pound paper. That might even be too heavy, just like a rice paper type of paper, and then I'm coloring it with some Copic markers and then using a very, very small hole punch that's in the shape of a flower, and then I'm just going to cut this all out and just set it aside for a little bit. And this is how I like to make stems with leaves. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the little flower cutouts, poking a little hole in the center of the cutout, and then threading it through the wire, and then I just use a little bit of glue to adhere it to the wire, and this is how I make my little stems. Now here I am measuring it with the little column just to make sure that it wasn't too tall or too short for the room. I'm also taking a little bit of a dark green acrylic paint and just putting it on the base of the leaves just for a little bit more realism. Okay, and now I'm working on this little planter. I didn't even end up using the bottom of it because it didn't actually match the shape of the planter, so I just ended up using a piece of paper for the bottom. Dry brushing is your best friend when you are trying to texturize something, make something look a little bit more antique-y. Dry brushing. I'm doing the thumbs up, but you can't see it. I also didn't like the dried plants it gave me, so I put my own plants in it. Okay, so there's gonna be a couple parts of this kit that I'm not going to show because I like this easel. No, just figure it out. Like, it was just all sticks and you just gotta put it together. And here's a shot of me having to sand this down because it didn't actually fit. I really hope that I'm not being, like, too much of an insane person about this, but like that one piece of wood that didn't match, no, nuh-uh. So I mixed up that color and I painted it so it was all the one same color. Now doesn't that look so much better? The other day, for some reason, I found this dog on the ground, so I'm gonna use it. No, but seriously, like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or whenever, when I filmed this, I was just walking, I think, to the car, and for some reason I decided to look down, like, very intently on the ground. There was just this dog on the ground, and I'm like, what the hell? Why is there just this tiny dog on the ground? Okay, so next I'm making these tiny little wooden boxes. And I didn't like the yellow, I painted over them obviously. I wanted to do kind of like this cute little pastel rainbow, but then I decided that it kind of clashed too much, so I dulled down the rainbow afterwards. Also, there's a couple pieces that I just don't know why they didn't give extra paper for it, like for the clock and for this little paint set. It didn't come with extra paper for the sides, and I was like, that's so unfinished, so I painted them. And for these little pencils, they're literally just toothpicks with paint on them. And I just stuck them into some tinfoil so they could stand up straight so they can dry. In retrospect, I probably should have just sanded the sides of this wooden piece so that it fit the painting, but whatever, I just painted the edges so that it looked like one piece. This is actually super cute, and I like it. Okay, so I really don't want to explain how to do this. You just put the sticks together to make the frame, and then you put the painting behind it, and then you glue it, and then you take the other pieces of paper, and then you put it on top of the frame so it looks like detail, and then you just do that, okay? Okay. This is probably my most favorite part, is to actually put it all together. Once you have all the pieces all done, it just reminds me of when I was a kid, and this is the most fun for me. And for adhering all of the pieces, I'm either using just hot glue or just regular school glue. I noticed that a lot of people are always like, you gotta use this very specific glue for this very specific thing, and I'm like, no. You can usually just use regular glue for most things, especially paperworks. It doesn't have to be like a contact cement or whatever. For, I think this piece in particular, I only used hot glue and just regular school glue. Shut up, bird! I don't actually hate birds, I'm sorry. But seriously, could you hear that? That like my microphone picked that up from like outside. Ooh, look at that bookcase, it's coming out so cute! You know, whenever you're doing kits like this, you could totally just follow it exactly if you want to. You might have seen earlier a photo of what it's supposed to look like. I actually just totally changed it. I changed the layout entirely. I just liked it better this way, and also because of the window, you can see the bookshelf better. I think originally they wanted you to have it all the way to the left. I didn't like it, so this is the layout that I chose to do instead. Now my voice cracked like a teenager. If you're interested in my voiceover work, you could hire me at www. Is that too many W's? Shit. No, it isn't. www.voiceovercanadastupid.org. Oh, I forgot things were happening. For these little paint boxes, they're actually just skinny sticks that I cut out, and then I put the label on it, and then I just painted the matching color on the wood part. I love tiny plants in anything, so I'm shoving tons of tiny little plants in this little room. The kit doesn't provide you with these are just my own plants, and I actually do sell a couple of the plants on my Etsy shop. We're gonna ignore that little bit of extra glue, just wipe it off with our fingers, and we're gonna move on. I forgot to mention, these are actually my own extra tiny books that I have made from a couple years ago actually, and I just never used them and I decided to shove them in here. I also added a tiny little glass jar and the cutest little pair of scissors ever, and I put them in here and it looks so cute and I love it. And with that tiny little plant, I think I am done with the inside, and we're gonna go and finish adhering everything together. Is adhering the right word? No, assembling the entire thing together. And here I have two little hinges and some screws, and I'm just going to be measuring out where I want the hinges and screwing them in, and this was hard. And either I decided not to film the other side, or I did film the other side and I completely forgot about it, or I deleted it, but I don't have footage for the other side. But I did do it. Okay, so right here, this is the lampshade that was provided in the kit, and I decided to actually take this one and turn it into a lamp for the outside part of the building, like a wall sconce. And I just used a little bit of wire and some black electrical tape, and I made it into like a little pole to stick out from the top of the building. Some last minute additions, and then we are done. It is still super weird that I found that tiny dog and it fits kind of perfectly here. I didn't glue the dog down because I didn't think it was necessary, and the only thing that I did glue down for outside was the little planter. And I didn't really want to glue down the dog just in case I wanted to move the dog for whatever reason. And here is the completed inside. There are a couple of things that I actually didn't add. There was like another frame I could have added and another painting I could have added, and there just wasn't enough room and I didn't want it to be over cluttered. It definitely looks a little bit cluttered here, but it's not too over cluttered, I think. But those were just a couple pieces that I decided that we didn't really need it in here. And here is the whole piece with the lights on. The lights always makes a huge difference. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on my Instagram if you want to, and do all the YouTube stuff. Anyways, okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye! Who the hell is this guy who's driving into my driveway? Yeah, you get out. Who the hell are you?